The Galactic Council chamber stretched beyond the horizon, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from 800 civilizations filled the amphitheater, their forms as varied as the worlds they called home. Some floated in gravity bubbles, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained within shimmering fields. At the center of this vast assembly sat the Council of Five, the ancient races who had shaped galactic civilization for over 10 million years, the architects, beings of living stone who had built the first hyperspace roads, the singers, whose harmonic frequencies could manipulate matter itself, the watchers, energy beings who recorded every moment of galactic history, the shapers, master geneticists who had uplifted countless species, and the judges, whose cold logic had maintained peace through absolute law. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Elena Kane stood alone at the speaking podium, a single, human among billions of alien minds. Her simple gray uniform looked almost primitive compared to the technological marvels surrounding her. She carried no weapons, no advanced devices, no exotic matter. Just a small recording device and a leather notebook her grandfather had given her decades ago. The Architect Prime's voice rumbled like grinding mountains. Human representative, you stand accused of violating the genetic purity protocols. Your species has been observed introducing artificial enhancements to your biological structure. This is forbidden under Section 743 of the Galactic Code. Elena felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, some filled with curiosity, others with contempt. The Shapers had been particularly vocal about humanity's primitive tinkering with their own genetics. To them, evolution was sacred, predetermined by cosmic design. Furthermore, continued the Singer Prime, its voice creating visible harmonics in the air, your species has shown dangerous tendencies toward emotional decision-making. Logic and order maintain galactic stability. Chaos breeds from feeling. The accusations continued for hours. Humanity was too violent, too unpredictable, too willing to change. The younger races watched nervously, knowing that whatever judgment fell upon humanity could easily befall them next. The older civilizations had grown comfortable in their power, their certainty that the galaxy belonged to those who had conquered it first. Elena listened to every word, making notes in her grandfather's notebook. He had been a soldier once, had fought in humanity's last great war before they reached the stars. Elena, he had told her on his deathbed, when the moment comes to speak for our people, remember what makes us human. Not our strength, not our weapons, but our hearts. The Judge Prime finally spoke, its mechanical voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Human Ambassador Kane, you may present your defense. Know that the penalty for violation of the Galactic Code is complete isolation. Your species will be quarantined to your home system, forever barred from the stars. Elena stood slowly, her hand touching the recording device. Inside it were the voices of 8 billion humans, each one sharing what made them proud to be human. She had traveled to every continent, every space station, every colony world humanity had touched. From children laughing in Earth's rebuilt cities to miners singing in the asteroid belts of their frontier worlds. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Sarge's Tales Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. The chamber fell silent as Elena activated the device. The first voice that emerged was that of a child from the Mars colonies, speaking in wonder about the stars she hoped to visit someday. Then came an old man from Earth's restored Amazon rainforest, describing how his ancestors had learned to heal their world. Voice after voice filled the vast space, each one telling a story of hope, of change, of growth. As the final recording played, Elena looked up at the Council of Five. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not our weapons or our technology. It's this. We believe we can become better than we are. The silence that followed Elena's words stretched across the chamber like a held breath. The Council of Five conferred in frequencies beyond human hearing, their debate creating ripples of energy that made the crystalline walls hum. Hundreds of lesser civilizations waited, their representatives shifting nervously in their designated areas. The Architect Prime was the first to respond, its mountain-deep voice carrying the weight of eons. Ambassador Kane, you speak of change as if it were virtue. But observe the galaxy around you. The Vorthan Empire collapsed because they altered their fundamental nature. The dreamers vanished into madness when they tried to transcend their limitations. Change brings chaos, and chaos brings death. Elena felt a familiar calm settle over her, the same feeling she'd experienced during her diplomatic training on Luna Station. Her instructor, Marcus Gray, had been humanity's first contact specialist. He'd taught her that aliens feared what they couldn't predict, and humans were perhaps the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. With respect, Prime, Elena replied. You speak of change as if it were a disease. But what if it's medicine? She touched her recording device again, and new voices filled the chamber. This time they weren't human voices. They were alien. The first was a Keth trader who had been dying of genetic drift until human biotechnology had stabilized his cellular matrix. Then came a flower child from the Garden Worlds, whose people had been saved from extinction when human engineers had restored their poisoned soil. The humans helped us when the older races said we were beyond saving. The flower child's translated voice whispered through the chamber. They didn't ask for territory or tribute. They asked how they could help. The Singer Prime's harmonics shifted to a discordant frequency. These testimonials prove nothing. The human tendency to interfere disrupts natural order. Species are meant to rise and fall according to cosmic design. Whose design? Elena asked, and the chamber erupted in shocked whispers. No one had ever questioned the cosmic order in the presence of the Council of Five. The Judge Prime's mechanical voice cut through the noise, the design established by those with the wisdom to maintain stability. The galaxy has known peace for 10 million years under our guidance. Your version of peace, Elena said quietly, but her voice carried clearly in the perfect acoustics of the chamber. But what about the voices of those who were never allowed to speak? She activated the recording device one final time. This time, the voices that emerged were from races the galaxy had forgotten. The glass builders, whose crystalline cities had been beautiful beyond measure before the architects had declared their expansion geometrically disruptive. The memory weavers, whose ability to share experiences directly had been banned as psychologically dangerous by the Watchers. The star dancers, whose joy-driven exploration had been stopped by the judges as inefficient resource allocation. Each extinct or suppressed civilization spoke through descendants who had survived in hiding, preserved by human historians who had sought them out among the dark spaces between stars. Their testimonies painted a picture of a galaxy where innovation had been strangled, where growth had been forbidden, where the natural curiosity of younger races had been systematically crushed. You call it stability, Elena said as the final voice faded. But stability without growth is death. You've created a galaxy of living fossils, beautiful and perfect and utterly sterile. The Shaper Prime rose for the first time in millennia, its form shifting like liquid mercury. You dare accuse us of sterilization, we who have guided the evolution of countless species toward perfection. Toward your version of perfection, Elena countered. But perfection is static. Life isn't meant to be static. Life is meant to grow, to change, to become something new and wonderful and impossible to predict. She gestured to the vast chamber around them. Look at this place. Beautiful, yes. Perfect, certainly. But when was the last time anything truly new happened here? When was the last time someone surprised you, challenged you, made you question everything you thought you knew? The Watcher Prime's energy field flickered, and for a moment Elena could swear she saw something like curiosity in its alien radiance. The human speaks of surprise as if it were desirable. But surprise brings uncertainty, and uncertainty brings fear. Yes, Elena agreed, and her smile was bright enough to outshine stars. And fear makes you feel alive. The words hung in the chamber like a challenge to the very foundation of galactic civilization. Fear makes you feel alive. Around the amphitheater, representatives from 800 worlds processed this concept with varying degrees of alarm and fascination. The younger races leaned forward in their seats, while the ancient civilizations recoiled as if Elena had spoken blasphemy. The Council of Five descended into heated debate, their exotic forms of communication creating a symphony of colors, sounds, and energy discharges that had never been witnessed in the chamber's 10-million-year history. For the first time, they were not unanimous in their judgment. Elena used the moment to her advantage. She had studied each member of the council extensively during her journey to the galactic core, learning their histories, their victories, their unspoken fears. The architects feared losing their perfect order. The singers feared disharmony. The watchers feared forgetting. The shapers feared imperfection. The judges feared injustice. But what if those fears were what made them great? "Prime counselors," Elena called out, her voice cutting through their discord. "May I share a story?" The debate ceased immediately. Stories were sacred to many galactic cultures, a neutral ground where even enemies could meet safely. The judge, Prime's optical array focused on her with laser precision. "Speak, human. But know that stories change nothing." Elena smiled. "This story is about a young architect, 10 million years ago, who looked at the chaos of hyperspace and saw not danger, but possibility. Her name was Stone Singer. Yes, I know, the old histories, the ones you thought were forgotten. She was afraid of the vast empty spaces between stars, afraid that civilizations would remain forever isolated. So she built the first hyperspace beacon, not because she was fearless, but because her fear of loneliness was stronger than her fear of the unknown." The architect Prime's massive form shifted, stone grinding against stone. Stone Singer had been the founder of their civilization, the first to shape matter on a galactic scale. Her name had not been spoken in the council chamber for 8 million years. "Or perhaps," Elena continued, turning to the Singer Prime, "you'd prefer to hear about Echo the Harmonious, who was so afraid that the beautiful music of her people would die with them, that she taught other races to sing. The fear of loss drove her to share what she treasured most, creating the first interspecies cultural exchange." The Singer Prime's harmonics shifted to frequencies Elena recognized as deep emotion, what humans might call grief mixed with pride. Elena addressed each member of the council in turn, sharing the forgotten stories of their founders. The first watcher who had been terrified of losing important moments and began recording everything. The first shaper who had been afraid her people were becoming extinct and began the work of genetic preservation. Each origin story revealed the same truth. The greatest achievements in galactic history had been born from fear transformed into action. "You've spent 10 million years trying to eliminate fear from the galaxy," Elena said. "But fear isn't the enemy of order. Stagnation is. Fear isn't the enemy of harmony. Silence is. Fear isn't the enemy of memory. Forgetting is." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering her final point. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not that we're fearless. It's that we're afraid of everything. Death, pain, loneliness, failure, the dark, the unknown, each other, and we do things anyway. We embrace our fear and transform it into wonder." Around the chamber, representatives from younger races began to stir. Elena could see it in their postures, hear it in their whispered translations. Recognition, understanding, hope, the dreaming coalition that you mentioned earlier. They didn't vanish into madness because they changed. They vanished because they tried to eliminate fear entirely, and without fear, they lost the drive to grow. The Vorthan Empire didn't fall because they altered their nature. They fell because they tried to alter it without accepting the fear that comes with transformation. Elena activated her recording device one more time. This time, the voice that emerged was her own, recorded just before she'd departed Earth for this mission. "I am Elena Kane, daughter of farmers, granddaughter of soldiers, representative of 8 billion souls who refuse to stop dreaming. I am terrified that I will fail them. I am terrified that my words will not be enough. I am terrified that the galaxy will remain forever locked in its beautiful, perfect prison. But I am more terrified of the alternative, a universe where we never tried to be better than we are." The chamber fell silent once more, but this time the silence felt different. Electric, alive with possibility. The Watcher Prime was the first to break the silence, its energy field pulsing with patterns Elena had never seen before. When it spoke, Its voice carried harmonics that seemed to bypass translation entirely, speaking directly to the emotional centers of every being present. In 10 million cycles of observation, we have recorded the rise and fall of 87 million civilizations. Not once have we witnessed a representative voluntarily confess fear while standing before the highest authority in the galaxy. Elena felt her heart hammering against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. That's because fear has been criminalized. You've made it shameful to admit uncertainty, dangerous to show vulnerability. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the birthplace of courage. The Shaper Prime's Mercury form rippled with what Elena recognized as agitation. Humans demonstrate this vulnerability by modifying their own genetic structure. You inject yourselves with untested compounds, replace organic parts with mechanical ones, and experiment with neural augmentation. This recklessness endangers not just your species, but any who come into contact with you. Let me tell you about Anna Reed, Elena said, her voice growing stronger. She was born with a genetic condition that would have killed her before her 5th birthday. Traditional medicine failed her. Shaper technology, when we requested it, was denied because her condition was deemed evolutionarily appropriate. So, human scientists, working in cramped laboratories with equipment held together by hope and determination, developed gene therapy that not only saved Anna's life, but eliminated the condition from future generations. Elena pulled up a holographic display from her device, showing the face of a young woman with bright eyes and an infectious smile. Anna Reed is now 26 years old. She's a xenobiologist who has discovered 17 new forms of life on the Rim worlds. Her research has led to agricultural innovations that have fed millions. The reckless modifications that saved her life have contributed to the betterment of dozens of species. The display shifted to show thriving colonies, abundant harvests, and alien children playing in gardens that bloomed with hybrid earth and alien plants. You call our self-modification dangerous, Elena continued, but we call it necessary. We refuse to accept that any problem is unsolvable, any condition is permanent, any limitation is absolute. We change ourselves because we believe we can be better. The Singer Prime's harmonics shifted into what Elena had learned to recognize as deep contemplation. The human claims benefit, but at what cost? Uncontrolled change leads to chaos. We have seen species destroy themselves attempting transcendence. Yes, Elena agreed, surprising everyone, including herself. Some of our modifications have failed. Some have caused pain, suffering, even death. We've made terrible mistakes and will make more. But the alternative is accepting that this, she gestured around the chamber, is as good as it gets. She activated her device again, and this time the hologram showed not human voices, but human actions. Medical teams rushing into disaster zones across the galaxy. Human engineers working alongside alien technicians to repair damaged infrastructure. Human teachers sharing knowledge with species the Council had written off as intellectually limited. You see chaos in our changes, Elena said, but we see potential. Every modification, every enhancement, every adaptation we make is driven by a simple question: how can we help? The recordings showed human volunteers in hazmat suits cleaning up toxic waste on poisoned worlds. Human musicians learning alien songs and teaching Earth melodies in return. Human diplomats negotiating peace between species that had been enemies for millennia. Our genetic modifications aren't random, Elena explained. They're purposeful. We enhance our lung capacity so we can work in thin atmospheres alongside species who need our help. We modify our eyes to see in different spectrums so we can communicate with light-based life forms. We strengthen our bones and muscles so we can perform rescue operations in high-gravity environments. The Judge Prime's mechanical voice carried an edge of something that might have been uncertainty. These modifications could be used for conquest. Enhanced humans could easily dominate lesser species. Elena laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so genuinely amused, that it echoed strangely in the vast chamber. Dominate? Prime, have you actually met any humans? The hologram shifted one final time, showing scenes from across human space. Humans sharing meals with aliens, teaching alien children, celebrating alien holidays, learning alien languages, adopting alien customs. The images revealed a species that didn't seek to dominate others but to understand them, to connect with them, to become part of something larger than themselves. We don't modify ourselves to become better than others, Elena said softly. We modify ourselves to become better for others. Every change we make is an act of service, an expression of love for a galaxy we're proud to be part of. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the silence of judgment or contemplation. This was the silence of recognition, of understanding beginning to dawn. The transformation in the chamber was subtle, but unmistakable. Representatives from younger civilizations were no longer simply listening. They were leaning forward, engaging, with Elena's words in ways that transcended mere translation. Even some of the older races showed signs of what humans might recognize as curiosity, their ancient certainties beginning to develop hairline cracks. The Architect Prime's massive form shifted, creating new geometric patterns as it moved. Human. Ambassador. Your words carry emotional resonance, but governance requires more than feeling. If we were to accept your philosophy of change, how would stability be maintained? How would we prevent the chaos that destroyed the Crimson Federation, the Void Builders, the Infinite Dream? Elena had been waiting for this question. She pulled out her grandfather's leather notebook, its worn pages a stark contrast to the advanced technology surrounding them. My grandfather fought in the last great war between human nations, she began. Millions died because our leaders forgot that their enemies were people too. After that war, humanity created something unprecedented, a global council where every nation, no matter how small or powerful, had an equal voice. She opened the notebook, revealing pages covered in faded handwriting and small, careful sketches. He wrote down the lessons we learned. The first. Strength doesn't come from being unchanging. It comes from changing together. The second. Leadership isn't about controlling others. It's about serving them. The holographic display activated, showing Earth's United Nations complex, but Elena quickly expanded the view to include the Martian Colonial Assembly, the Belt Miners Cooperative, the Europa Research Consortium, and dozens of other human governmental bodies. Every human settlement, from the smallest asteroid mining station to the largest planetary colony, operates on the same principle. Decisions are made by consensus, not decree. We argue, we debate, sometimes we even fight, but we never stop talking to each other. The Shaper Prime's form rippled with what Elena had learned to recognize as skepticism. Consensus is inefficient. Debate wastes time that could be spent solving problems. Does it? Elena challenged. Let me show you the Kepler crisis. The hologram displayed a star system on the verge of collapse, its primary star showing signs of instability that would destroy all life within 50 years. The display showed the traditional galactic response: evacuation protocols, refugee resettlement calculations, resource allocation for the surviving population. The Council of Five would have evacuated the 12 inhabited worlds and written off the system as a total loss, Elena explained, efficient, logical, and acceptably merciful. But humans were among the settlers on 3 of those worlds. The display shifted to show something unprecedented. Human engineers working alongside Kepler natives to construct massive stellar stabilizers. Not evacuation, but salvation. The project took 30 years and required cooperation from 47 different species, Elena continued. We had to invent new technologies, develop new forms of communication, create new frameworks for interspecies collaboration. It was inefficient, chaotic, and completely insane. The hologram showed the final moment. The stabilizers activating, the star's dangerous fluctuations smoothing into stable fusion, the 12 worlds safe for another million years. But it worked. Not only did we save the Kepler system, but the technologies we developed have since been used to stabilize 17 other systems across the galaxy. The collaborative frameworks we created became the foundation for the Mutual Aid Compact, which now includes over 300 species. The Judge Prime's optical array focused intensely on the display. This cooperation came at significant cost. Resources that could have been used elsewhere, time that could have been spent on other projects. Yes, Elena agreed. But consider what we gained. 300 species that used to view each other as competitors now work together as allies. Technologies that would have taken millennia to develop individually were created in decades through collaboration. And most importantly, we proved that problems which seem insurmountable alone become solvable when we work together. There was Singer. Prime's harmonics shifted into frequencies Elena had never heard before. Complex, layered patterns that seemed to incorporate elements of music from dozens of different species. The human demonstrates an interesting principle, the Singer Prime admitted. Harmonic complexity increases when multiple voices join in concert. Perhaps the same could be true for governance. Elena felt her heart leap, but she forced herself to remain calm. That's all we're asking for, Prime. Not the destruction of the council system. Not the elimination of the ancient wisdom you represent, but expansion. Let the younger races have voices in galactic governance. Let new ideas compete with established ones. Let the galaxy become a symphony instead of a solo performance. Around the chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds began to stir, their various forms of communication creating a buzz of excitement that transcended species barriers. The human speaks of symphony, the Watcher Prime observed, its energy field pulsing with new patterns. But in our records, symphonies can become cacophonies. How would discord be prevented? Elena smiled, thinking of her grandfather's words about courage and hearts. The same way it's always been prevented, Prime. By listening to each other, even especially when, we disagree. The chamber erupted into a symphony of discussion unlike anything in its 10-million-year history. Representatives from 800 civilizations talked among themselves, their varied forms of communication, creating a light show of colors, sounds, and energy patterns that would have been beautiful if it weren't so potentially dangerous. The Council of Five found themselves in the unprecedented position of having lost control of their own assembly. Elena stood at the center of it all, still and calm as the storm of voices swirled around her. She had done what she came to do, planted the seed of possibility. Now she had to trust that it would grow. The Architect Prime's voice boomed across the chamber, carrying harmonics designed to restore order. Silence! This assembly will maintain proper protocols. But for the first time in galactic history, the younger races didn't immediately comply. They had tasted the possibility of having their voices heard, and they weren't ready to swallow that freedom back down. A representative from the Leaf Dancers, a species barely 3,000 years old, rose on her delicate wings. Prime Architect, with respect, why should we be silent? Are our thoughts less valuable because our civilization is young? Before the Architect Prime could respond, a deep singer from the ocean worlds added his voice. We have problems the Council hasn't addressed. For centuries, our world's thermal vents are dying, but requests for assistance are denied because they don't align with efficient resource allocation. More voices joined in, species after species sharing grievances that had been suppressed for millennia. The Crystalline Collective spoke of their need for silicon-based lifeforms to be included in atmospheric regulations. The Hive Dancers requested recognition of group consciousness as a valid form of sapience. The Metal Shapers asked why their cybernetic evolution was forbidden while the Shapers' genetic manipulation was encouraged. Elena watched the Council of Five as complaint after complaint filled the air. The ancient beings weren't angry. They were stunned. In 10 million years of absolute authority, they had never been required to listen to this many dissenting voices at once. The Singer Prime was the first to adapt, its harmonics shifting to incorporate fragments of the various complaints into a complex musical pattern. When it spoke, its voice carried undertones of genuine curiosity. These concerns, they have merit. But addressing them individually would require resources beyond current allocation parameters. Unless you work together, Elena suggested, quietly. But her voice somehow carried to every corner of the vast chamber. The Deep Singers need thermal technology. The Metal Shapers specialize in heat-resistant alloys. The Crystalline Collective has developed methods for channeling geothermal energy through mineral matrices. She activated her device one final time, and the hologram showed not human achievements, but potential alien collaborations that had never been allowed to develop. You've spent 10 million years preventing species from working together because you feared they'd become too powerful to control, Elena said, addressing the Council directly. But what if instead of controlling them, you guided them? What if, instead of ruling through authority, you led through wisdom? The Watcher Prime's energy field flickered through spectrums Elena couldn't name. The human suggests a fundamental restructuring of galactic governance. The risks are incalculable. So are the opportunities, Elena replied. Yes, some collaborations will fail. Some experiments will cause problems. Some changes will create new challenges. But the only alternative is stagnation, and stagnation is just death with better marketing. The Shaper Prime's Mercury form began to shift into new configurations, patterns Elena recognized as deep contemplation. If we were to consider such restructuring, what safeguards would prevent chaos? Elena felt a surge of hope so intense it was almost physical. They were asking how, not whether. The conversation had shifted from judgment to negotiation. The same safeguards that have always worked, she said. Transparency, accountability, and the understanding that power is a responsibility, not a privilege. The Council of Five would remain as advisors and mediators, sharing their wisdom with younger civilizations rather than imposing it upon them. She gestured to the assembled representatives, their varied forms still buzzing with excited discussion. Look around you, Primes. This is what democracy looks like. Messy, loud, chaotic, and absolutely alive. These beings aren't your subjects, they're your equals. They always have been. It just took someone crazy enough to say it out loud. Judge Prime's mechanical voice carried new frequencies Elena had never heard before. Something that might have been uncertainty, mixed with what could only be described as hope. The human proposes that we share power with those we have long guided. This represents a change so fundamental it borders on revolution. Elena smiled, thinking of her grandfather's stories about soldiers who became farmers, about enemies who became friends, about a species that had learned to transform its greatest fears into its greatest strengths. Not revolution, Prime. Evolution. And isn't it time the galaxy evolved? The silence that followed Elena's final words was different from any that had come before. It wasn't the silence of judgment or contemplation, or even shock. It was the silence of a universe holding its breath, waiting to see if 10 million years of absolute order would finally give way to something new. The Council of Five conferred among themselves in frequencies beyond the range of most galactic species, their debate creating visible ripples in the fabric of space around them. For the first time in their collective existence, they were truly uncertain about the path forward. Elena watched ancient beings grapple with concepts that challenged the very foundation of their reality. The Architect Prime's geometric forms shifted through configurations that had never existed before. The Singer Prime's harmonics explored musical territories that bordered on chaos. The Watcher Prime's energy field flickered through spectrums that had no names. The Shaper Prime's Mercury body flowed into patterns that seemed to represent possibility itself, and the Judge Prime's mechanical precision wavered as it calculated probabilities that exceeded its programming. Finally, the Architect Prime spoke, its mountain-deep voice carrying harmonics of something that might have been wonder. In 10 million years of perfect order, we have prevented countless catastrophes. We have maintained peace, stability, and the survival of galactic civilization. But we have also prevented growth. The chamber stirred as representatives from 800 worlds recognized the admission implicit in those words. The Singer Prime's voice joined in, creating a harmony that incorporated melodies from dozens of species. The human speaks truth, about symphony versus solo performance. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to sing new songs. One by one, the other members of the council added their voices to what was becoming an unprecedented consensus. The Watcher Prime acknowledged that history was meant to be written, not just recorded. The Shaper Prime admitted that evolution required risks, not just safety. The Judge Prime concluded that true justice must include the voices of those being judged. But it was the final statement that changed everything. The Council of Five hereby dissolves its absolute authority over galactic governance. The Architect Prime announced, its words echoing across the chamber, and, through quantum communication, across the entire galaxy. We will remain as advisors, guides and keepers of ancient wisdom. But the future of galactic civilization will be decided by all species together, as equals. The chamber erupted in celebration, but Elena found herself thinking not of victory, but of her grandfather's final words to her. When the moment comes to speak for our people, remember what makes us human. Not our strength, not our weapons, but our hearts. She had spoken for humanity, but in doing so, She had spoken for every species that had ever dreamed of something better than what they had been given. Over the following months, the Galactic Council Chamber was rebuilt to accommodate democratic representation from all member species. The ancient amphitheater, once designed to showcase the power of the few over the many, was transformed into a place where every voice could be heard. The changes weren't instant or easy. Coalitions formed and dissolved, arguments erupted over resource allocation and territorial disputes, and more than once, the new Democratic Assembly seemed on the verge of collapse. But each time crisis arose, species that had never worked together before found ways to collaborate, to compromise, to create solutions that none of them could have imagined alone. The humans, ironically, became some of the quietest voices in the new government. Having sparked the revolution, they seemed content to step back and let others lead. They continued their work of modification and adaptation, but now it was in service to a galaxy that welcomed change rather than feared it. Elena. Kane returned to Earth as a hero, but she spent her remaining years not basking in glory, but teaching. She established the Academy for Interspecies Understanding, where young diplomats from hundreds of worlds learned the most important lesson of galactic civilization: that differences weren't obstacles to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. On her deathbed, surrounded by students and colleagues from across the galaxy, Elena was asked about her greatest achievement. She smiled, her eyes still bright with the wonder that had carried her voice across the stars. "I didn't change the galaxy," she said. "I just reminded it that it was allowed to change itself." The recording of her speech to the Galactic Council became required study at every major university in known space. But the words that were remembered most, quoted by leaders and philosophers and dreamers across 1,000 worlds, were the simplest ones. "We believe we can become better than we are," and in believing it, they did. The galaxy that emerged from the collapse of the old order was messier, louder, and more chaotic than what had come before. It was also more alive, more creative, and more hopeful than anyone had dared imagine. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. Technologies that had been forbidden were refined and shared. Art forms that had been suppressed flourished in new and impossible combinations. There were failures, conflicts, and disasters. Some experiments failed spectacularly. Some collaborations ended in bitter arguments. Some changes created new problems that no one had anticipated. But for the first time in 10 million years, the galaxy was growing. And in the end, that made all the difference.